Hi, I'm Gabby. Our modern and ever-changing society demands a new vision of public schools. Now, I've been working in public schools for the past 3 years. I've worked in 4 different schools in 2 different districts, one rural, one urban, special education, general education. And across all of these settings, there is one common theme. I'm hearing teachers, staff members, parents, community members, just about everybody noting significant negative changes in student achievement, academic achievement, and behavior. Now, we can all agree that the change is there, but we cannot agree on who's accountable or how we should respond. I present to you the nature of this problem and the best course of action to progress out of it. Public schools today are harmed by their own use of a deficit-based approach and can be improved with the use of an asset-based one, and with the implementation of and creation of a partnership between communities and schools. Now let's talk a bit more about what we see in public schools today. In public schools today, we see a deficit-based approach in just about every aspect of it, okay? The deficit-based approach describes what lens you view the world in. When you use a deficit-based approach, you see the world through a lens that can only see lack and bad things, in the way that people are slacking, or even yourself, or you just see the world with this lens that likes to pick up on and perceive people to be lacking in some way, okay? And this concept exists outside of the field of education. It can be applied to just about every context of life. But when we use it in the education context, we might, it may show up, or it may manifest when we hear people say things like, kids these days can't do anything, or kids these days are so poorly behaved. Or you might hear somebody say, how am I going to teach grade level curriculum when all of my students are 2 grade levels behind? Or you might hear somebody say, I blame the parents. The parents don't support their children, don't teach them anything at home. Or you might hear something like, the community is so poor, don't expect anybody to show up or help out. And yes, okay, there is a change happening, because the only thing that's constant in this world is change. And so when our student population, their skills, their challenges, their struggles, their whole world has changed, but our education system has not changed, we have failed to adapt, we have failed to meet their needs. And so we need to stop blaming them when we are the ones who have control of how we approach them in educating them. It's like we blame them for not being able to compare to the standards that were once applicable to students that were educated generations ago, okay? 100 years ago. Our students today may not have the same skills as kids did in the 1940s, and that's not our students' fault. It's like downloading iOS 14 on a rotary phone. The infrastructure was just not made for that. So here's a graph of data conducted by Wodarts et al., Wodarts and others in that pile of research. So what you see on this graph is reading scores and how they relate to median household incomes per school district. So school districts that serve more affluent families their students are scoring higher on the 3rd grade reading test. And if I use a deficit-based thinking to view this, I'm going to look down here and I'm going to think, these school districts, these people living in these communities, they are no good. They are slacking. They are lacking. They are unethical. They don't care. They're not helping their kids. They're not doing what's right. This and that, this and that, this and that. But why don't we ask the question of why there is such a heavy discourse between these communities and schools? How come our education system is only working for these communities and not these communities? So instead of applying a deficit-based approach that simply just casts blame and does not, and is in no way helpful, instead of using a deficit-based approach, we can use an asset-based one. Now, when we use an asset-based approach, we recognize and appreciate the strengths in people, in our students, in our communities, in our parents. However, but let's think about the assets or the strengths of our students today, okay? Our students today are digital natives. So, and no, they may not be able to write a paragraph as well as they can make a TikTok, because they're born in 2015 and not the 1940s, okay? In the 1940s, the primary way to communicate with your friends was through writing letters. And today, our kids are not doing that to communicate. They're using Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok. So we need to stop comparing apples to oranges. These kids have grown up in a drastically different world than the world in which we created the standards. And when we use an asset-based approach, we tell people that they do have something to offer, that there is genius within them, that they can and ought to engage with the world because they can do good works. And when we move beyond just recognizing and appreciating their strengths, we can see parents and communities as equal and true partners in this work toward creating healthy and educated young adults. Now, what I'm describing is a mutually beneficial relationship between the community and the school. The community can provide resources to the school can provide resources to the community is pouring into the kids at the school, and the school will produce kids that will go back and do good things in the community. It's mutually beneficial. And what I'm describing is the community school strategy, which has been implemented, and there have been more and more of these schools implemented across the nation. And these are public schools. There are charter schools that are called community schools, but that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about public schools that use the community school strategy, okay? And there are four core elements of the community school strategy. So these schools provide student and family services, health services, mental health, social services, things like that. They offer expanded learning opportunities, active family and community engagement, and community-based learning, just for your knowledge. So within this community school strategy, there's shared accountability between the community and the school to educate these kids. They see it as both of their effort are vital in creating effective education fit for modern life. Now, and since Cincinnati Public Schools had a huge initiative with this strategy in the 2000s, and Euler School actually went from 2/3 of its students dropping out before graduation to 90% of its students graduating. And that's according to Blank and others, Blank Italia, found in my bibliography if you would like to know more. Yeah, when community invests in the schools and when schools embrace the community, we can produce young adults that are ready to go out in the world and do good things. So, public schools have been challenged by deficit-based thinking, but they can be improved with asset-based thinking and with the use of the community school strategy, which implements a partnership between communities and schools. Now, that is what we see and how we ought to respond. Let's share the accountability of educating our students and focus on what we can do as we guide them through this ever-changing world. Thanks.